No, I don't think the Liberal government wants to help Canadians, save Canadians, or fix our planet. Instead, I think they want to completely crush our country. And that was reiterated today as the new oil and gas emissions cap was announced. Here's what was said.
We talk a lot about climate change these days for very good reason.
No, the reason is you're totally insane. You are nuts. That's the reason they talk so much about the environment, these eco-radical Marxists.
Planet is at risk of burning up.
The planet is at risk actually from you, from your leadership, from your government, and from the imposition of all of these policies which completely crush us. You care more about the planet than you do the people who live on the planet.
Top scientists have been measuring it for decades.
Politicized scientists.
It's not new news. And people everywhere have seen it in the floods, the wildfires, and the storms. This past summer, we experienced the most destructive forest fire season in Canadian history.
Which is strange because the Liberal government has been imposing their policies for the last 8 years. And so considering that they're doing so, that they've done so, considering that they've increased the amount of climate action in the country over the last 8 years, why would the forest fires be getting worse? If their policies were working, as they claim, then why is it we had more forest fires this year than we did in any previous year? It's almost as if someone was setting fires, starting fires. And I didn't know that before the Industrial Revolution, the climate was perfect. There were no floods. Did you know? There wasn't any massive freezes. Did you know? The weather was never too hot, nor was it too cold. It was just perfect, and no one was ever at danger from nature. Amazing.
It forced the evacuation of tens of thousands of people. It destroyed homes and livelihoods and blanketed our cities and our towns in clouds of smoke, certainly including here in Ottawa. The policy we are announcing today is one of an array of policies that Canada has been putting into place to do what we can to slow and eventually stop the planet from burning up.
No, instead they're doing what they can to introduce Antichrist as quickly as possible. These men hate freedom. These women hate freedom. The Liberal government hates freedom. They love Antichrist and they love manifesting the revelation. And if anyone wants to say, oh, they're not actually pursuing a one world government, they're not honestly pursuing a one world order, it's like, fine, be foolish. Like, the evidence is so demonstrably clear. Just look at what the Liberal government is doing. If men can't see that now, then they're never going to see it until it's far too late. It's ridiculous what the Liberal government is up to. We're going to move ahead to the actual announcement itself in the interest of time.
40 to 45% reduction across be technically achievable for the sector to achieve by 2030. We then looked at what more could be done beyond what is technically achievable to enable the oil and gas sector to go further in terms of in the short term via the use of compliance flexibility such as domestic offsets. And finally, we examined projected, and including Canada, will achieve net zero by 2050. After taking all of these factors into account, we are proposing to set the cap level at 35 to 38% below 2019 levels in 2030.
That is absurd. These are insane targets. These are unbelievable targets.
This is an important part of Canada achieving its goal of a 40 to 45% reduction across the economy by 2030. We certainly intend to consult on this approach in the coming months.
Consult with who? With the servants of Antichrist? And you've done a good job. So you have this massive reduction in the emissions that are allowed from oil and gas. And so therefore you have to reduce, because oil and gas is already efficient. You have to reduce the production of oil and gas, according to Danielle Smith and Scott Moe, by about 1 million barrels per day. That's massive. It's about 25% of total capacity per day. Think of the wealth that's being destroyed. Think of the quality of life that's being destroyed. Think of the benefits that are being destroyed because of these radicalized men. And this idea that oil and gas is filthy is absolute nonsense, and it needs to be challenged. Look at how much cleaner the world is now thanks to products made with oil and gas, thanks to the innovation, the generation, the power that's provided to us by oil and gas. But these blind sheep being led by a wolf, by Antichrist, honestly, himself, it seems, refuse to see it. Wilkinson is dangerous. You have to be careful for him because he exudes a confidence with this low and soothing voice that other Liberal members don't have. And yet, his plans and his ideas are just as radically insane, totally insane, and I mean every word of that, than they are with other Liberal members, Liberal ministers. They're just as ridiculous.
A thoughtful and aggressive plan aimed at reducing carbon emissions in the oil and gas sector on a path to net zero by 2050 will help to secure the long-term competitiveness of the industry while creating well-paying jobs.
Laughable. This government talking about competitiveness is a joke, especially in the oil and gas industry. Their policies mean that we are increasingly uncompetitive in the market. Look at Bill C-69, for example. That is perhaps the most uncompetitive bill ever passed in the House of Commons. And then you have more and more government interference like this. Just a few days ago, you had Wilkinson and his contemptible group of minions canceling exploration off Nova Scotia, at the Scotian coast, because they thought it wasn't environmentally responsible or legitimate, even though the regulatory board said that the companies should do it. More and more government is interfering in our oil and gas sector every single day. And the idea that it makes it therefore more competitive is absurd. This government is destroying Canada. This government is destroying us. And we will not be these weak pacifists who sit in our hands and do absolutely nothing, even as Wilkinson and Guilbeault and other radical men completely steamroll the nation. Instead, we're going to act as men and women ought to act, with passion and with zeal and with justice and with truth, honesty, restraint, but ferocity, tenacity, to see that our beloved Canada and our beloved provinces, the West, is saved from these vile men.